What's good, everybody? It's Connor here with Fast Money Labs, and I'm going to be diving into some video content this week. I want to introduce everyone to a special guest I have today. His name's Kevin Debs. Welcome to the stage, Kevin. So I know that many of you are familiar with my work on Twitter, posting through Fast Money Labs, and Kevin is a good guy in my network who's really interested in sports betting, but he took a break for a while because it didn't go as well as he'd like back in the day. Kevin's based in Florida. So, Kevin, you want to give us a quick intro and then we'll dive in. We're going to talk about the crowds line today and how we're using the tool to help try to turn our baseball seasons around.
No, it's a great point, and I think you were being awfully charitable when you said that it didn't go too well. That's an underscore. That's defining weakness, because I was just awful. And after a while, you lose your way. But just to give you a quick intro, I spent the better part of about 25 years working on Wall Street in a capacity, whether it was right there on Wall Street or in Midtown Manhattan. Did some time out in Vegas as well, and just enjoyed the heck out of it. And that's how, I ended up meeting another friend of ours, Anthony Lage, through our trading paths. And when he got excited 10 years ago about, this concept of the crowds line, we've just stayed in touch and partnered up on that. And so as we come full circle, here we are in 2024, and you and I have had a chance to meet and stuff. It's so amazing, all the technology, all the things that are happening around sports gaming, that I said, you know what, maybe I'm not ready to put my toe in the water yet, but I've got to understand this a little bit better. I got to understand how this is all going to start to become part of everybody's daily life, as a source of entertainment, a source of action, and hopefully a source of success.
Thanks, Kevin. And yeah, I mean, there's so many people out there who bet basketball and bet football, and then the summer comes around and there's only one real big sport to be betting on, and it's baseball, right? And I just know from my experience, I mean, I grew up playing baseball, but there's just so many stats, right? It's easy to be overwhelmed by all the numbers, and I'm a numbers guy, but you're trying to find that right formula of what are the stats that really matter. And as you go through that exercise, what I find is our human biases kind of take over, right? Where you think you've narrowed in on the right stats and it's working a little bit, and then all of a sudden it stops working. And you start to get really confused and almost frustrated. So that's where, to this day, I mean, I've struggled to find that process for baseball, particularly that drives the consistent results. So when I was introduced through the crowds line and just learned about how they're modeling this stuff out, it really opened my eyes to a different approach to making your picks. And at first I was a little skeptical, right? Because I feel that I have a good process, but it's constantly disappointing me in some way or the other. So by giving this a shot, I think we have an opportunity to just show people that there's a different way to make your picks. Rather than just studying all what's happened in the past, what we're really trying to do here, Kevin, is predict the future. So with the crowds line, they have a predictive model that's taking all these numbers, crunching them in the exact amounts that actually matter. And that's determined by a machine learning process that's way over my head. So I'll have to get Justin in here to really give us the breakdown. Justin does all the modeling. So I think let's take the chance to kind of walk people through our journey of going from average Joes who win some but lose more to a more sharp perspective where we can actually feel really confident when we're clicking place bet.
I look at it, I think it's a great way to describe it. If you had this type of tool laying over your process, which a lot of times is such a strain on you emotionally, psychologically, and then physically, right? Because you start to stress about your losses and you're playing catch up. So if there was a tool like you're talking about that analyzes things that you just may not have put your lens on, and helps you make decisions more like if you were making an investment, more calculated, more detail oriented, because it's money at risk. It's not, and treating it less like something, a chance of winning or losing. That's an incredible tool, right? And so you hope that it's successful. Obviously, we're we're in the early stages of it, and it's a sport that you and I used to say, man, I used to love playing baseball. It's painful to watch sometimes because it's so long and it's drawn out. And with the advent of, player prop bets, you can start to focus and dial into certain things on multiple times a game, right? So you can start to make the action when there's inaction more exciting, more palatable to the average, gambler. And so that's what you and I are thinking about here. We're after the All-Star break. We're like, can I turn baseball into more than a pastime? And so it'll be exciting to see how the crowds line helps us shape that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kevin, before we dive in, I'm going to load up the Crowds Line website, which will just serve as a guide as we try to make our picks today. So while I serve that up, I mean, do you have any anecdotes or betting stories that kind of you could share to kind of give us some insight how your old process worked?
I remember, you talk about process. It's a good way of talking about it. I remember going out to Vegas on a family trip. I think I was still in college, gambling a little bit for sure. And I was out there with my parents and my brother. And I remember it was the middle of football season. And, gamblers always have their own stories. And I never forgot it. We're sitting in the Wynn sports book, and I'm next to a guy who's got like a front pouch of all these papers and pens stacked in the front. And I'm trying to make my way through the sheet and see what I want to bet for the afternoon games. And we just, naturally you start talking in a sports book. And this guy was like, listen, I'll give you my picks, but I'm never going to give you my process. And I was like, gee, what's the process? He goes, I can't talk about it. I got such an elaborate process, but I'll give you my picks. And I said to him, I said, how'd you do yesterday? He goes, well, I was 2-1, which barely covers the vig. And I was like, what, why would I want your process? Like, I don't know if any of this is of value, but that's how serious sometimes gamblers take themselves about how they go about it, how they diagnose, whether they should bet on a game or not. And I have so many stories I could tell you about, like, if you just were all to put it under a category of wasted time, the prep work I put into it, the conviction I had. I remember just one other story quick. Barry Sanders is a Hall of Fame running back, played for the Detroit Lions. Most of you know that if you're listening to and you're part of Conor's fan base. And Barry Sanders was unbelievable, and he was even more unbelievable in college at Oklahoma State. And I remember my father out to dinner with a colleague of his who was a gambler, but I knew Charlie very well. And Charlie was betting on Wyoming versus Oklahoma State in the bowl game. And he was like, Barry Sanders is overrated. Wyoming's got a defense. And they went out to dinner, and he's talking it up the entire time. I see this as a lock. It's not a big, there's no way that this spread's going to get covered by Oklahoma State. They didn't watch the first half of the game because they were out to dinner with the wives. They get in the car. My father turns on the radio, and Barry Sanders ran for like 6 touchdowns. I mean, it was 63-7 or something like that when they turned the score on, and he had all this prep work and everything going in. And that's the definition of a gambler. You literally have such conviction in everything you're doing, and all of a sudden you see the score. You're like, I cannot believe. I mean, it couldn't have been more wrong. It's the most lopsided against somebody who had such utter conviction. Like, there's no way Barry Sanders is going to be able to run on Wyoming. And it wasn't even close. It was over after the coin flip. And I have 10 times those type of stories, but it's like, it's just funny how people get so morally and emotionally convicted on a bet, and they couldn't be more wrong. They're not seeing the signs. And so you and I will have future broadcasts. There's a story for every broadcast. I
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Yeah. Awesome stories and great introduction, Kevin. So what's interesting about what you're bringing up is, in our minds, before you place a bet and before you come up with that idea, right, we're actually making our own projection in our head of what we think is going to happen, right? So in this story, these guys basically made a projection in their head that Barry Sanders, there's no chance he's going to run over these guys, right? And then we tend to overweight our confidence, right? Because you think this is going to lose, right? But in practice, we know that everything is a probability, right? Nothing is perfect. And personally, that's why I love the sports betting world, because no one actually knows what will happen. We're all making our best educated guess. And our educated guess right now is a projection in our head. So why not, in this age of AI and machine learning and really smart computers, why not put all that hard math to work using an algorithm that does the thinking for you? So I'm going to show you right now, Kevin, what the crowds line has going for baseball, and then we'll make some picks in real time here. So
Fantastic.
bear with me. I'm going to try to share my screen and figure this out.
One other real quick story that you'll appreciate. Do you remember Hurricane Katrina?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the Saints were at home against the Falcons. I was on the desk polling everybody. Everybody's telling me the Saints. I'm not even thinking about the emotional response of the Superdome and how fired up the crowd's going to be. And naturally, it geared me towards the Falcons. All of a sudden, I saw the crowd, and it dawned on me. I'm like, wait a minute, you just bet against hurricane survivor victims in their first game since, being displaced. I go, this has got to be the dumbest bet. And it was over before you started. Like you never see a block punt. It was the first thing out of the gates, right? A block punt. All of a sudden, I was like, I cannot believe how stupid I was not to factor this all in. And there's 100 stories like that. It's just amazing how you miss certain things.
Oh, yeah. So appreciate that background, Kevin. So now I'm showing my screen here. So we're on the crowdsline.ai. Now I'm going to refresh my screen. So just a couple things that are interesting here. So this is a real live living, breathing forecasting machine. So every 6 minutes, this is actually refreshing to check if there's any new information that's came in and that would affect the forecast. And likewise, it's also updating with the market odds across more than 10 popular sports books, Kevin. So no matter where you like to bet, I know you're in Florida, so you're probably interested in the Hard Rock bets. But no matter where you like to bet, you can actually select your sports books and see what the model feels are the best betting opportunities in real time, or really every 6 minutes. So this is something, I talk to a lot of people and they say, well, I follow people on Twitter and they put out great picks, but by the time I get to the pick, the odds have moved or the line has moved. We've all been there, right? And that's a frustrating experience because you're left wondering, should I still bet? Is it still good at this line or different odds? That's a question that everyone has wondered at least once. And this is addressing that head on. So as a user, Kevin, you could log in from your phone or anywhere you want and actually see in real time whether something's still a good bet. So
well, I was going to ask you, Connor.
Displayed here is the latest forecast, 2 p.m. on Monday, the 22nd. You got a question, Kev?
Oh, I go ahead. I there was a quick pause. Go ahead, and then I'll ask my question.
Awesome. So these bets, they just push some updates. So these bets are listed in the order the model would take them if it could actually place real money. So there's dozens of bets here, ranging from the safer end of the spectrum to more risky, high risk, high reward bets. And you'll notice that there's an edge column here. So Kevin, I want to take a moment to explain that. So right here is the market odds. And then next to it is the fair value according to the model. So if the model were actually pricing this bet as a sports book, this is what the model would have the odds at. And the difference can be thought of like the price discount. So if you're shopping on Amazon, you see a 20% off, whatever, that's a deal you probably want to make. Same thing here, where we're showing the edge or the difference in price between the market and the model. And a common question is, why would a 3% bet be ranked number one when we have an 8% and 12% down here? And the answer is, from speaking with the crowds line, they've informed me there's a risk assessment that's happening behind the scenes to determine what the confidence interval is for a given bet, right? So while this is only a 3% edge, the models had tremendous success predicting unders on doubles. So the machine learning process is able to pick that up and say, okay, we're really good at predicting this one area. There's less uncertainty around that, and we feel much more confident. Therefore, that informs the ranking. So it's a blend of the price difference or edge and the unique risk characteristics of each prop.
And real quickly, so if we look at if I'm reading you correctly, this is the bet on Jorge Polanco.
Right.
So you think that he's going to have under a double, right? Because the line is under 0.5. But the odds on it, it's an 88% chance to win. And the weight, obviously, they've got you can get into that. But the Caesars Sportsbook has the best odds. And if I read you correctly, if we were just basing it on 100, you would want to lay 556 to win 100. And fair
Right.
value is
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. So the bet sizing, that's a matter of personal preference, right? And ultimately, you can decide which ones you want to take. So in a hypothetical world, Kevin, where the model was able to make real money bets, it's trained to think like a Wall Street trader, which is just like your background, right? So rather than buy one stock with all of your money, it's been proven that in Wall Street, it's a much better strategy to diversify your investments by investing in multiple different stocks that might have different risk and return characteristics. That way, you might do really well on one stock, you'll do poorly on another, and it balances out. And it's just been proven that this is the optimal way to manage money. So what this model is doing is it's trained to think just like that, but in a sports betting context. So imagine you have $1,000 that you're managing and you want to put it into sports betting. The model's recommending, just like a stock trader would, a percentage that you should allocate to that position. So in this case, the 1.75% weighting corresponds to, you just do the math, multiply it by whatever you're investing.
I'll say this just as as the untrained loser better of the millennium. And that's a fair title for me. I could lose with the best of them. What I think is so unique and what everybody needs to take away from this, there's 55 bets on the Crowdsline Sports board right now, the blue book of the best bets. And when we look at the odds on Jorge Polanco, most bettors wouldn't think of, wait a minute, I'm going to bet $556 to win $100. We would go right to the bottom, right? The number one, like where there's the least amount of edge, but still bet and say, wow, I could put money in on this and win 4,600 for every 100 I lay. Knowing full well that is percentage wise and all the different elements of it. So what I like about this, to you, the exact point you made, if I can start thinking about this like a portfolio on a daily basis, I have to factor in like there are 4 or 5 wins at the top that I may risk a little bit more capital, but to ensure a win. And I've got 55 cracks at it. If I just took the entire board and indexed it, right, like an index, and said, okay, today's Crowdsline is 55 stocks that go into this, but I put a weighting to each one. Well, now I'm going for a rate of return. Now I'm going for a level of success that I've never thought about gaming individual bets ever like before. I think about that when I invest and hedge myself, right? And saying, okay, I want certain weightings in different sectors or certain weightings in different stocks based on risk. But there's an emotional component that creates a lack of success when it comes to gaming and chance and athletics. So I didn't mean to interrupt, and I'll let you, kind of get back to what you were saying. But that's so fascinating to me. That's huge because it's reprogramming how I think.
Absolutely. And I'll just say, Kevin, my personal bias that has just been so obvious, it really comes through if you look at my past picks, is I'm biased to overs. And I know a lot of people struggle with this where, you want to bet to win money. And that's obviously why we're all here. But there's also an element of the entertainment side of it, right, Kevin, where when you're watching that game and your guy steps to the plate, like you want to be rooting for him to hit that home run, right? You don't want to be rooting for him to do poorly per se. And that's a bias I've had that I'm starting to realize looking at this board that we're staring at. It's opening my eyes to potentially one of the reasons why I've struggled so much. And if I'm biased towards overs, that means I'm ignoring unders. And you know what? Unders are half of the board. So that means I've been completely ignoring half of the board. And by the way, unders are usually the more profitable bets. So not only am I ignoring half of the bets, I'm ignoring probably some of the better ones. So by using this tool, it helps really get me away from that emotional bias towards a more informed, smart decision. And we see that pull through as looks like 7 of the top 8 ranked bets are unders today.
It's the anti-Conor index. It's
Yeah.
fantastic, right? It's forcing you to think about it logically, and it's like kryptonite, as a gambler. But if this board starts to show levels of success, I don't want to mince word. I know we're going to do sort of a for the viewers to hold our feet to the fire. We're just going to take a selection, a small subset of what the Crowds line is offering, and allow you guys to put us in the dunk tank, right? Like if we're on it, and we depending on what our selection is, whether it's random or calculated, and I'll let Conor speak to it and kind of close with that. So if it's good with you, Conor, how are we going to go into Monday's bets? And obviously we're going to do this periodically, a couple times a week, and pick times, but we'll always hold ourselves accountable. That's the one group, with our adoring fans, we'll make that agreement. So I'll let you kind of explain that and talk about how we're going to make our bets today, and then that we'll obviously have them on the next show.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be as transparent as possible. We're riding or dying. So, if it goes well, that's great. If it doesn't, we're going to learn from our mistakes. And, we're just like everyone else. We're trying to make informed decisions. So, for this first episode, Kevin, the 5 that are drawing, my attention are really the top 5 here. So, like you said, this seems like a very strong bet. The model thinks it's great. I'm not personally probably going to bet it straight. If you're feeling risky, you could do a parlay. So for my 5 picks that I'm going to make on the show today, 4 picks. I'm going to take these 4 to start, Kevin. So Tyler Stevenson under singles,
Okay.
Jazz Chisholm over RBI, Josh Naylor under singles, and Carlos Santana under singles. So the reason I'm honing on these 4 is because they have predicted win rates that are, in 3 of the 4, it's over 50%. So that means we'd expect a negative sign. And I mean, the price difference is just right in my wheelhouse. I just feel like these are very playable odds, and we're getting a good edge. I'm on all these 4 sports books, so I'm going to roll with these 4, Kevin.
Okay.
And, it's always subject to change, right, as the lineups are coming in. So a lot of the lineup information is TBD right now. So I'm just throwing my trust behind the model that, hey, if these guys are in the lineup, which we expect they will be, they're going to underperform with the exception of Jazz Chisholm here.
I love it. I'll say this. I'm in for half the action. It's sink or swim, right? We're rolling this together. The partnership is thus created. These are the first 4 bets. Have at it, and then we'll see how we did on the next show. But this is fantastic because it's breaking down years and decades of poor decision making, just right out of the gates, right? Things that you and I would have never looked at, that we're now looking across the board. Thanks for all these metrics, these extra elements, to say to ourselves, maybe you didn't know what you were doing. And I can confirm that,
Yeah. Awesome. So I think this is our leap of faith right now. I'm going to go lock in those 4 right after we hang up.
I love it. This has been a pleasure. I appreciate you having me on. Hopefully it's we've got a lot of runway ahead of us. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, we've got ground to make up. So to recap, Kevin and I are going to be doing a series. Occasionally we'll be hopping on here, And we're both going to just see if the crowds line can help us improve our results, get that consistency, and start betting like a sharp, eliminate those biases and really capitalize on this revolution of artificial intelligence and supercomputers, who I'm starting to realize, against my expectations, the supercomputers are a little smarter than me. I'm starting to realize. So
I'll leave you with this: the sign of the apocalypse. If people start calling me for wanting to know what my picks are, that's going to be, then you're going to have to start worrying. But hey, if the crowds line's going to point me in that direction, I'll have no problem relaying the success we've had.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So thanks to everyone who tuned in. Hope you got something out of this. And then, in the future, we'll be live streaming this so that folks can come in, ask questions. And we just want to use this as a Q&A opportunity. And the thing that's so nice about the crowds line is they're really receptive to customer feedback. So if you have a feature idea you want to see them develop, or a new market or sports book you want to see them analyzing, just let us know in the comments and we'll be happy to pass that along.
Sounds good. All right, my friend. Thanks again for having me on. I look forward to the next broadcast, and let's get a win out of the gates.
Awesome. Let's go. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks again for joining.